You may love that house, but I wouldn't buy it. You never want to buy housing in these areas. Now, there's certain types of homes that I'd tell my clients, look, you need to run. I've been around the block a few times. I've helped thousands of people over the past 20 years. I have seen the good, the bad, and the ugly, and I really just want to make sure that you're avoiding the pitfalls that are costly. So if you're okay with that, just give me a thumbs up. Now, here's the 30 types of homes that you never, ever want to buy in these areas. And some are obvious, and some on this list are not so obvious. So I'm going to count down from 30. Earthquake fault lines. Now, properties that face higher risk of damage and destruction due to earthquakes could lead to costly repairs or even a total loss. So the big problems here are the insurance challenges, that finding any company that will insure this property, and the real difficulty and the emotional distress comes with the anxiety that some residents have if they're living there. They just don't know when. Number 29 is sinkhole-prone areas. Now, some areas and places like Florida have sinkholes that can suddenly have the ground collapse, and it leads to major damage to the home's foundation, the walls, the interior, the exterior, and even a full loss of the home in some cases. But the real thing here, again, is the insurance costs may require a separate or a super expensive sinkhole coverage with higher premiums and higher deductibles, and future property value concerns are also an issue here. Now, these hidden sinkhole risks may not even be evident with you get a standard home inspection, right? So what's truly going on really requires a specialized geological assessment, and that's going to add to your purchase costs. Number 28, steep slopes and landslides. Doesn't seem like any big deal, right? Heavy rain, erosion, and even shaking earth when it settles could trigger a landslide and potentially damage or destroy your home or endanger anybody who's living there. So we've seen this recently. And we've also seen the insurance challenges that can be expensive or difficult to obtain. Again, if you've got a mortgage on the property, it gets harder. Now, access issues to the property with a steep slope is another issue. You may have a complicated driveway access, or even parking, or if you need emergency services, especially if you have adverse weather like rain or snow. So additionally, there's ongoing maintenance costs that it's associated with retaining walls and erosion controls, and the potential for long-term increased in expenses. So there are real concerns that high maintenance may deter future buyers by possibly even lowering the home's future value and the marketability. Number 27 is volcanic activity zones. Now, lava, ash, eruptions, they're pretty rare, right? But they can be devastating if it happens, because if it happens, that land may become completely unusable. Now, ash can also damage the roof, and it contaminates water supplies, clogs your HVAC system, and causes health issues for anybody living in that area. So standard homeowners insurance, if this stuff happens, won't cover you for this. You want to have insurance that's specialized, and this stuff is a high-cost policy, and it can be hard to secure one of those. So if you're getting a mortgage, again, the bank will want you to have insurance. Number 26, flood zones. Now, everybody knows this, right? You're at a higher risk of flooding if you're close to water, right? But you also want to think about, recently we've seen this happen nowhere in the coastal areas where people are getting flooded. A heavy rain, a river overflow, or a storm surge can damage the home, your belongings, and even the land itself can be completely changed forever. Now, flood insurance is often required if you have a mortgage, and again, a separate homeowner's insurance policy is needed for this. But depending upon where you live, it can get expensive. Now, premiums vary based on the flood risk levels. So just ask a Florida homeowner how this mess has become, because they're skyrocketing in Florida. And many are actually leaving that state and looking for alternative areas because the cost of skyrocket is so much. I mean, just take a look at Cape Coral, Florida. They're finding resale values for these properties has really decreased, and it makes it harder for those properties to sell because the new owners still have the same problem. And I have a video here on this channel about that. But the next one is, number 25 is wildfire-prone regions. Now, if your property faces a higher chance of damage or destruction from wildfires, especially in dry areas, again, we've seen this again in the news, homeowners are going to face a safety issue. They're also going to have that insurance issue, which can be costly to obtain, and that additional coverage. Some areas just don't even have it. So even if you have that fire-resistant landscaping, which takes a lot of energy and effort and money, and fireproof roofing, there's still concerns and evacuations and prolonged displacement and even the air quality issues. Number 24 is hurricane and tornado prone areas. Now, we all know, we've seen the increased insurance costs in the flood requirements if you have a mortgage in regions. But if you need to build a new home or you're retrofitting a freestanding structure. Just think about this. Anywhere that has this extreme weather, you need hurricane straps. You need impact-resistant windows to meet that code. And if your home has not been upgraded, you buy one of these cheap homes, you might face costly repairs and updating to make it storm-ready. And there's also that potential for property damage that you've already seen in the news, and along with the concerns of tiresome evacuations and return accessibility and the resale value challenges I've mentioned, and utility and infrastructure risks from power surges. People get that. You don't hear about that stuff. And compliance with these new building codes that they keep on adding. I've heard so many people that are retired, the emotional and lifestyle impacts are just way too much to deal with, so they're moving on. But the next one on this list here is 23, subsidence and sinking land areas. Now, you may think this is no big deal, but I lived in Virginia, and it was nowhere close to an area where you'd think there would be any issue, but there was a thing called shrink swell soil, and it impacts the foundation, which actually had to be built twice as thick. Now, if you don't take soil samples pre-build, some people just build houses, you wouldn't know this. And it causes instability because you get cracks in the walls if you don't have it done right the first time, uneven floors, and even structural damage. So along with higher repair costs and water and drainage issues, where the water comes off the land, the property value risks, and of course, insurance is going to want to know about this as well, and that's another issue. But number 22 is coastal erosion areas and ongoing property loss. We've seen this before where somebody's got a beachfront house and, it collapses, or shifting shorelines. North Carolina Outer Banks is notorious for this. The coastal hazard insurance may not even be available if you're out on behind the low mean tide. You cannot even rebuild a house if you got that issue. Number 21 is landfills and toxic waste sites. Now, the long-term health risks, there's a lot of concerns here with contamination and odors, and even the air quality can be one of these issues. Now, more than likely, property values that are near a landfill, they're not going to be worth as much as if they were further away, or even if you have a toxic waste site. If you go to sell that property, there's going to be some buyers that are going to be hesitant to purchase in these areas. So there may be higher levels of resale or turnover in higher numbers. Because homeowners have had cancer or other health issues. I know of specific neighborhoods that were built next to a manufacturing plant, and many of those people passed away and they had short lifespans. Well, the plant is gone, but those health issues are still there. So again, having the knowledge, making sure that you know what is good, what you want to stay away from, super important to get a educated realtor that can guide you in and out of that. But anyway, go to the next one here is the contaminated brownfield sites. Now, environmental risks due to the soil or the groundwater pollution, right, from industrial history on that land. In Maryland, there were several plants that were building cans and they had lead in the land and that sort of thing. Well, they built condos on that land. But guess what? They had to do all kinds of surveys and they had to make sure all the land was cleared and perfect. But, if you're suspect to something and you think that something's going on, I highly recommend you reviewing that site's remediation history. There should be some reports, or even the current environmental reports. You may want to consult with an environmental specialist because this one really can be tricky. Next one is 19. It's nuclear power plants, and I think a lot of people do already think, I'm not living close to that, but most people appreciate a low cost of electric, but when it comes to, living near a nuclear plant, I'm not going to do that. And it's because of the potential radiation exposure or evacuation concerns, and resale can be a real issue here as well. And number 18, in Pennsylvania and a lot of areas in the Northeast, there's a high radon level in those regions. So if you're in that area with radon, I always recommend having the property tested for radon and then consider mitigation systems like the ventilation and the sealing of the ground levels. Make sure it's all safe on all levels, because radon is really known for an increased cancer risk from the natural gas that seeps out of the ground. And number 17 is fracking or oil extraction sites. Now, we see this somewhere in Texas. We've also seen this in the mid-United States. It can lead to air and water contamination and methane leaks. They just come out. Obviously, the land is being shifted underneath. Things change and they shift, right? But often those property values, the things you don't think about, or the resale, and even financing can be an issue. And if it comes to the bank and they find out it's near oil or fracking sites, they get a little concerned. And usually there's going to be regulatory and disclosure issues along with those properties, and long-term infrastructure impacts can happen at any given time. Number 16 is high air pollution zones. Now, of course, air pollution quality can lead to chronic health impacts, from that emission or the smog. And if you have a high level of particulates in that zone, in the ozone or nitrogen dioxide, It can increase risks of respiratory issues and asthma and allergies and cardiovascular. This is especially true in children and the elderly, so you want to know about that, and you want to stay away from that. You just don't want to do it. Now, here's another one. Number 15 is under high voltage power lines. Now, there are health concerns from electromagnetic fields. Some people don't feel like it's an issue, but there is a stigma from health issues. And homes that are near power lines, I can guarantee you, have a lower market value due to the apprehension about the health risks and the aesthetics and the noise. You'll hear humming and crackling if the lines get wet. And sometimes those increased concerns from power surges or even fallen power lines. Oh my gosh, I'm going to have a fire. The easements on your property. All that stuff can limit the resale pool when you have to or you need to sell. Number 14 is personal safety threats. Now, how someone feels about where they live, it is super important. So you want to review the factual crime statistics, because everything you read online is not always true. And you want to make an informed decision about what feels comfortable to you. And number 13 is all surrounding properties that are unkept. We've seen this before. Some neighborhoods are super neat, and other ones, they're just a total mess. But the property value in one of those types of neighborhoods could depreciate over time, because that curb appeal and the buyer's perception of a cluttered or neglected or dilapidated property, they always seem to be cheap, but they also come with challenges of finding insurance and financing. If the bank goes to take a picture of this and they see these houses are old roofs and everything's around it is not looking right, it can be challenging. So many times people say, I don't want an HOA, and we end up showing them properties in a no HOA, and they say, no, I don't want that mess. Well, there's a reason, because there's no rules to how to manage your property. And we've seen many times, a property go into a downward spiral when there's no rules or regulations on how you should maintain. You can have a perfect lawn, you can have everything that you like about your house. Down the street, they could be hoarding all kinds of stuff and putting stuff all over the place. So I have a video here on this channel about finding the deal of the decade on an abandoned home, and I think you'll love it. So go ahead and check that out here on this channel as well. And number 12 is next to a school. Now, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. Depends on if you have kids, not. But here's the concerns that a lot of people tell me is noise and activity from traffic and congestion, and of course, privacy concerns, event disruptions. If you have a baseball game or a soccer game or a concert or meetings, it can all lead to parking challenges and potential issues for that long-term resale value. Number 11 is industrial areas. Now, chemical exposure, you may not smell it, you may not see it, but there could be odors there could be spills, there could be trains, trucks, or any kind of industrial hazard traffic. This is what you need to watch out for, and you never want to do that. Number 10 is next to highways. It's the consistent noise that can disrupt your sleep, your outdoor activities, your general quality of life, and pollution can also increase respiratory issues. Again, the property value or the resale concerns can really have considerably less value for that same house if it was on a lot that was not near a highway. And remember, real estate is all about location, location, location with any of these. Number 9 is adjacent to railroads. I've been in areas where the railroad was not anywhere close to the house, yet randomly you would hear a train whistle and hear this big locomotive vibration. So the closer you are to that, even if you're miles away, it can be a nuisance. But if you're really close or adjacent to a railroad, random vibrations and the noise from freight trains, especially freight trains, can generate significant noise. It's not just the horns, it's the engine and the track vibration that gets in the ground and keeps on going. It could disrupt your sleep and even your daily activities, particularly if that train runs at night or day or whenever it's running. And number 8 is near airports. Now there's two parts to this. First part is aircraft noise from takeoffs, even if it's not in your direction, right? If there's a change of weather or a pattern disruption, they change the direction on that airport, you could get it. It could be the takeoff, it could be the landing, it could be low-flying planes that can be disruptive. And it's convenient if you fly a lot because you need to be close to the airport for travel. But of course, you're going to see property values and resale value changes. Depends on where you are and what city you're in. And again, this next one is related. It's number 7, which is under major flight paths. Now, noise may not be as loud if you're not right next to the airport, but homes that are under the flight path have a lower property value and slower appreciation due to concerns with air quality, or extremely rare, but you might get a risk of an aircraft accident or debris from planes. And it could be a concern for future buyers, particularly in areas that are in busy flight paths. And I owned a house at one time and it was in a flight path. you get like you don't even hear it anymore. But it's somebody looking at that house, it takes a lot longer to sell it, and you're not going to get as much money, I can assure you that. But again, just be aware of this. You never want to do this. If you can pick the best properties, you always want the best. Number six is military installations. Now, noise from exercises and access restrictions. We're talking about traffic and aircraft and artillery training and vehicle operations and even the congestion and safety issues. Now, for instance, in Norfolk, Virginia, you'll see bumper stickers that say, "I love jet noise. It's the sound of freedom." But if you live near Aberdeen Proving Ground in Maryland, and even if you live miles away, you can feel the ground shake and your windows rattle, even in brand new construction homes. Number 5 is next to busy commercial districts. I think you already know this. If there's traffic, if there's aircraft, if there's vehicle operations, you're going to get congestions and all the other things that go along with that. And number 4 is water scarce or drought prone areas, because stricter water usage restrictions really can impact your daily life. Everything from landscaping, you may garden, but you're not going to if you can't get water, right? Filling pools, washing cars, and even taking showers. So you may also pay increased costs for water and the maintenance of that water. Drought-prone areas may have a future lower value due to uncertainty of future water supplies. So just be sure you know your water rights and your infrastructure setup if you do have those concerns. Number 3 is high allergen environments. Now, not all areas with heavy yellow pollen or ragweed or oak trees in the spring. I'm talking about you really need to be aware of all regions, even regions with mold due to humidity, because this can trigger asthma or respiratory issues, or particularly in sensitive individuals, this can be a real problem. Number 2, areas with frequent pest infestations. Now, there's health and hygiene risks, of course, from rodents and cockroaches and termites and ants. They even pose health risks. And this includes disease transmission. Now, if you have a property damage from carpenter ants or termites, especially in warm weather climates, you need to consider that ongoing maintenance cost as part of the effect of keeping that property. And I also recommend doing a CL100 termite inspection before you buy any property like that. And number 1 is regions with inadequate infrastructure. I'm talking about poor roads, poor utilities, or isolation issues. The places where it's limited access to utilities. Now think about this. Inadequate infrastructure. It means that there's going to be a slower response time if you need emergency services. You need fire or medical or police. Now, limited coverage can also be a personal safety risk. Now, if you're in a remote area, you may have a difficult time with the resale because obviously not many people know that area. And how do they get to you to find it? And if you have an open house, you're going to have many people through. So just understand that. But guys, this is the biggest part of the video right here. Listen to what I'm saying. If you're buying any of these types of properties and you're still moving forward with it, ask your realtor for the seller's disclosure, even if you're buying any property, because you're not going to get that stuff on Zillow. It's the termites, the age of the roof, the water issues, any leaks. The seller has to answer those questions truthfully on a written property disclosure. That's the law. So if you want to ensure that you have the right real estate expert that's working with you to achieve that, you need to know the stuff like flood zones. Zillow's not telling you that. Wildfire areas or major flight paths, or sometimes the use of the land. You won't know that stuff because Zillow doesn't have that stuff. Sometimes there's no mandatory disclosures for things like bombing ranges. But the local real estate expert may still warn buyers about potential risks of unexploded ordnance due to the historical use of that property in recent discoveries. Now, I personally know 13 neighborhoods that are affected by this, and they've had bomb squads in backyards of brand new construction homes, and they just see this shiny piece of metal sticking out of the ground 6 months after the moon. I know this stuff happens, and I just want to make sure that you are avoiding these pitfalls that are costly. Now, if you're new here, be sure to like this video and subscribe. And if you need a referral for a real estate agent in your area, anywhere in the nation, go ahead and click that link in the description below. I'll be happy to connect you with a local expert in your area. And I hope you found this video helpful. Did you? Go ahead and let me know. Put it in the comments. And I'll see you in the next video. Take care, guys.